Welcome back to another session of Your Place on God's Dream Team, The Making of Champions. We've been talking about the traits, the characteristics that make up a championship team, and we've talked about composure. Champions are people who keep their cool under pressure. We've talked about humility. We've talked about authenticity, motivation, persistence, interdependence, and in the last session, we talked about champions are individuals who thrive in obscurity. They don't have to have notice, recognition all the time. They're happy to work hard behind the scenes for the glory of God. In this session, we're going to be talking about another trait of champions. We're going to be talking about nobility. And what I mean by that is champions are those who aspire to nobility. You know, it's always good to watch certain athletes that have, there's a certain character about them, and one of the things they recognize is that the game is bigger than they are, and they respect the sport in which they're playing. They treat the sport with honor and nobility. One of the individuals that expressed this very well was the 1968 Olympic decathlon champion, Bill Toomey. And he reflected that attitude when he said, and I love this statement, he said, "When I competed, it was for honor and country. It was a privilege to be a part of the U.S. team." And there's something about honor. And the whole idea of nobility means that the person has such a high level of respect for who it is that they're playing for, and even just the very dignity of the game itself. And so they aspire to nobility or to excellence. When we believe that life is sacred, when we believe that ministry is sacred, that it is a gift from God, then we want to give the very best that we have to God. We want to honor God with our life. We want to honor God with our service. You know, when we believe that the church is valuable and precious, then we want to give our best for the church. You know, when I understand this, Jesus died for the church. He shed his blood for the church. He said, "I will build my church." And we know that Jesus is coming back for a glorious church without spot, wrinkle, or any such thing. That makes me want to give my very best. I believe the church is a noble cause. When we believe the ministry, serving God, is an honor and a privilege, it makes us want to give our very best. You know, when Jesus was here on this earth, he demonstrated that attitude. He said, "Father, I have glorified you on the earth. I have finished the work which you gave me to do." We have a holy calling. You know, Jesus obviously had his awesome and amazing and wonderful calling, but we've also been called with a holy calling, and it should stir within us an aspiration to nobility. There's a verse that I love about Jesus and the ministry that he was called to. It says in Mark chapter 7, verse 37, it says, "And they were overwhelmingly astonished, saying that he, Jesus, has done everything excellently, commendably, and nobly." Stop and think about how Jesus did things in his life. He did them excellently, commendably, and nobly. I know this, if you read the context of this, it's talking specifically about the miracles and the healings that Jesus performed. But I'm going to tell you one thing. I don't think that Jesus started performing with excellence when he began preaching sermons. I think Jesus was just as committed to excellence and nobility when he was working at the carpenter's table, when he was making chairs or building something. I think everything he did with his hands, with his life, I think everything he did for the glory and the honor of God. Because I think Jesus was so cognizant, he was so aware of the fact that he was here for the Father's glory. And you and I are here for the same reason. Jesus said, "As the Father has sent me, so send I you." And I believe that everything that comes from our life, I don't think we need to be obsessively, compulsively, perfectionistically, driving ourselves crazy, trying to be perfect all the time. But I think that when we love God with all of our heart, I think there's just a desire, a yearning on the inside of us to do our very best for Him. He gave His best for us. We want to give our best for Him. And I want to share with you 3 traits of people who aspire to nobility, people who aspire to excellence in their life. First of all, people who aspire to nobility appreciate their heritage. The world didn't start with us. The church didn't start, when I got born again. The church has been around a long time. There have been a whole lot of people that have given their life for the church. We think of Jesus dying on the cross, and could never overemphasize the significance of that. But even in the Old Testament, there were prophets who were stoned to death, who were sawn asunder, people who gave their life for the truth. As the church was established, there were people who shed their blood. They were stoned. They were burnt at the cross, at the stake. They were thrown to the lions. People who stood up for the truth. And when I think about what people have given so that you and I could have the truth today, I believe we owe them a great debt. When I think about people who died so that we could have the Bible in the English language, I'll tell you, we shouldn't take the things of God, the things of the church, the things of the Bible. We shouldn't take them or treat them lightly. There should be a holy, reverential awe. And just like in the Old Testament, they were not allowed to offer up a flawed, blemished sacrifice. They had to give God the best they had to give. And it was never meant to be a legalistic burden to do that. It should be the joy of our heart to give God the very best that we have. So people who aspire to nobility appreciate their heritage. Secondly, people who aspire to nobility value the significance of their current work. We understand that whatever we do for God is valuable and important and merits our best efforts. Jesus said this, "If you even give a cup of cold water to one of these little ones who believe, you will in no way lose your reward." So we need to know there's value in our current work. There's significance in our current work for God. And perspective is such a huge part of that. In 1666, in the fire of London, the famed St. Paul's Cathedral was burnt to the ground, and they brought in the greatest architect in Europe at that time, Sir Christopher Wren, and he laid the plans for the rebuilding of St. Paul's. Amazing cathedral if you've ever been in it. And he was known, of course, Sir Christopher Wren was known to the people at the higher echelons, but he was not known to the common laborers. And as the work was underway, he just journeyed out one day to the work site and was watching what was going on. And he saw some men who were cutting stone. And he walked up to the first man and said, "What are you doing?" And none of these men knew who he was. And the first man said, "Well, I'm cutting stone." And he walked over a little ways and found another man and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm earning so many shillings a day." And he found a third man a little further yet and asked him what he was doing. And that man looked up and he said, "Sir," he said, "I am helping to build a magnificent cathedral for the glory of God." And it's interesting how three people can be doing the exact same thing externally. One guy says, I'm cutting stone. Another guy says, I'm earning so much money per day. And yet the third guy says, I'm building a cathedral for the glory of God. Our perspective is everything, and it will determine the amount of energy and effort and quality that we put into what we do. People who aspire to nobility see the significance of their current work for God. And finally, people who aspire to nobility seek to leave a positive legacy. I love the movie Gladiator, and I love it when Maximus tells his men what we do in life echoes in eternity. And we need to understand that things we do today, they have an eternal consequence, and they have a consequence and effect in future generations. I love what 1 Timothy 5:25 says. The New Living Translation, it says, the good deeds of some people are obvious, and the good deeds done in secret will someday come to light. And we read in the book of Revelation, chapter 14 and verse 13, John writes, and I heard a voice from heaven saying, write this down. Blessed are those who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, they are blessed indeed, for they will rest from their hard work, for their good deeds follow them. And, there's a couple different ways to look at this. One is, I believe our works do follow us into eternity, and I believe we'll be rewarded according to our works. But also, our works follow into the future generation. Our works today can have an impact and blessing in people's lives tomorrow, even our children and those that come in future generations. And I believe that people who aspire to nobility understand this, that Christianity isn't just about my momentary blessing, but Christianity is something that should so work profoundly and transformatively in our lives in this day, that what comes out of our lives brings blessing and encouragement to people who follow us in the days, the weeks, the months, and even years to come. People who aspire to nobility understand that they are to leave a legacy for those in the future. Dorcas is a great example of a person who left a rich legacy. Scripture says of her that she was always doing kind things for others and helping the poor. After her death, we read that the room where people had gathered, listen to this, the room where people had gathered was filled with widows who were weeping and showing him, Peter, the coats and other clothes Dorcas had made for them. She left a legacy of kindness and generosity. I plan to live a long time on this earth, but someday you and I are going to be gone. And the question is, what kind of legacy do we leave behind? What kind of tangible impartations and memories will we leave with other people? Remember what Calvin Coolidge said. He said, no person was ever honored for what he received. Honor has been the reward for what he gave. So we're going to be rewarded for what we gave, and we want to leave a rich legacy. May we be givers and not takers, and may we leave every person we've ever encountered richer for having known us. Let's aspire to nobility. God bless you.